Hey everybody, one other Indie Hour. We are back with a patron pick for the third week of January 2025. We are diving into cults this week. Last week it was all giant robots. This week it's endless horrors, cults, and weird ancient gods, with endless horrors from between the stars. And Verrotwood, our patron pick for this week. Now Verrotwood was actually, I covered it on GMG Reviews a few moons ago, like two-ish years ago, but this was a patron pick for us to come back to for some cult horror because it had been underrepresented. And of course, Forbidden Psalm has just come out with Endless Horrors from Between the Stars, which paired up nicely for all of your cult folk horror needs. And we are now sort of thick in it as we dive in and take a look at these two games. So if you haven't been part of one of these before, my patrons will pick a game for us to do a feature on, and then another game for us to sort of like pair with it. I will pick myself as a sommelier for all your gaming needs, and dive in and, like give an overview so you guys can see other things that aren't there before and get exposed to new games that you may not have heard of. So let's see who's in the chat and say hi. Looks like we got T-Bird here, Treadheads Workshops here, Malev the Shinobi's here, Ryan Dunphy's here, and we are going to get this thing started. Gazman's here. It's Wednesday, baby, so who knows who's going to be able to make it out. Usually we get about 20, 25 people in the chat. And I'm going to, usually the videos split into two parts, so I'll start off with game one, which will be Verrotwood this time around. Take a break, see what folks in the chat are thinking about it, and then we will dive into game number two. So let's have a look at our first game, which is Verrotwood. So if you haven't played or seen or watched the GMG review for Verrotwood before, this is a indie game written by Mike Crutchett. Mike is a super nice guy. I've actually talked to him a few times at Adepticon, and this is fully done by him. All the miniature painting, everything. He is just a 28 fan. So if you want to check this out, it's on Wargames Vault for $9 right now, and you can get a nice preview of it. Hey, look, there's a review by some asshole as well that's there on the site, which is nice. He's done a few expansions as well. He's got a token sheet, a compendium of new stuff, and then an Old West version, which is super fun. Cults in the Old West. But we're going to focus on this one right here. If you're a fan of, Midsummer or The Ritual, these sort of like dark folk indie horror movies and stuff like that, Verrotwood's probably right up your alley. It even has kind of like a Resident Evil 4 sort of vibe, or Resident Evil Village, where you have like the weird cultists, like in like some backwards sort of Transylvania-esque kind of place, trying to end the world with their ancient gods. So, of course, this is a miniature agnostic game. That means that it is fully use whatever minis you want. You can see here some of the lovely minis that Mike painted are some of the cultists from North Star, used for Frostgrave typically. But there's other stuff featured from Blackside Studio, Knucklebones, Matt at Knucklebones, Reaper, and Rotten Factory. And of course, what you need is going to be the first section. So 3x3 table, D10s. It uses a dice pool based system where it's a little bit like Lord of the Rings, roll pool of dice, pick the highest, person with the highest dice pool wins. So for instance, if you were going to attack, there's 4 stats, you'd use your strength stat. If you're going to hit someone with an axe, the example here is if you had a strength stat of 1, the other person had a defense stat of 2, then the attacker would roll a die, see how high they roll, and then the defender would roll 2 dice, pick the highest, and whichever one was the sort of like highest individual dice roll would be the winner. Now the setting for this game is Verrotmere, the womb of creation and protector of the forest. Long before man set foot in this land, all that existed was Verrotmere and the trees. Verrotmere is this god. He would oversee the forest from this throne in the void. Under his immense love, the land flourished for centuries. Over the ages, a great desire grew within Verrotmere to create offspring of his own. He would will countless children into existence through his womb. These children would help rule over the woods. His love for his children was unmatched, and that is until man found their way to the shores of this land. So the idea is that like we're interlopers in this area, and it was kind of pristine and pure before. Verrotmere had been taken by the race of man. We were like nothing he'd ever seen before. He saw us as deserving of his love, and he was so infatuated with us that he chose us as his inspiration when creating his final child. This child was to be known as Ethos, and he was to rule from Verrotmere's side in the void. The other children of Verrotwood felt the love of their father rot away. They'd grown bitter and vengeful towards their father and ethos, and they vowed to take away what Verrotwood held most dear. This was to be the beginning of the mass slaughter of man. Our ancestors fought back, but we're powerless to stand against these gods. Verrotwood could not control his children, so he did the unthinkable. Ethos was sent from the void to wage war on his siblings. The war lasted for an entire year as Ethos slayed his brothers and sisters one by one. His blood-soaked battles took him from the snowy northern peaks to the southernmost swamps of the Verrotwood, and finally all that remained was him and his oldest sister, Verona. And this battle lasted for 2 full days, and the climax high in the sky above the forest. Ethos, knowing all that was lost, tore off Verona's wings, and the two plummeted to the forest floor. Finally, the war was over as the two let out their final breaths. And then Verrotwood wept for his dead children and the mistakes he'd made. It said that on that day, Verrotwood vowed to make the race of man his children. He would protect them and provide the splendor that he still benefit from to this day. Praise Verrotwood, the womb of creation and protector of man. So basically you live in this giant ancient forest, which is on the bottom half of a continent, and there's villages and hamlets, but the place is hostile and treacherous. And years ago, there was a giant bell that ran across the sky. And from that, the skies darkened, crops withered. They thought Verrotwood had abandoned them. And while there's believed the bell signified his death, no matter what's true, the people of Verrotwood have begun to look for answers in the things they do not fully understand. They've turned to dark things of old that lay in the slumber deep in the woods in hope of salvation. So basically, the dead children are now being prayed to by humanity as like the world starts to crumble. And it's a little Greek Titans versus the gods, right? But now you've got your dead gods basically being prayed to because the one big creator has disappeared and the world is starting to fall apart. So this is the dice system. I just described this, right? It's a D10 based dice pool system. So there's no limit how big the dice pool can be, but you always have to have at least one. Then you just roll off, pick the highest one, and the number of successes you get, or not successes that you get, the number that is the highest in the pool of dice becomes your total. So you got a couple examples here of using strength. So for instance, the strength 2 model would be attacking a defense 1 model. They roll 2d10 and get a 2 and a 6, picking the 6 as the highest. Model B rolls a 6 on their d10, and the Model A would successfully attack because their total was higher. Now we've also got ritual points. So ritual points are kind of like a fluid currency for buying favor, weird powers, power-ups. They're kind of your magical wins, and you start off by pooling them all together based upon who's in your cult. So before each game, both cults roll to gain their ritual points. Each cult has the preferred stat that helps represent their god. So for instance, there's 4 different gods. Each one's tied to a stat. If your preferred stat is strength, then you use everyone's strength when doing this. Both players would roll their preferred stats worth of dice for each model individually taking part, taking the highest result for each model and adding them to the cult's shared RP. Your RP would then be on the cult sheet. So like if you had 5 models in your cult, you would roll the dice pool for each one, taking the highest total. So you'd have between 5 and 50 ritual points for the game. There's a recommendation that if this is like your first game, maybe don't use ritual points and just have a fixed total of 20, but you're going to get roughly that many. You're going to get between 20 and 30 usually just with an average dice roll. Then turn sequence. Every game is broken into rounds. The number of rounds will be determined by the scenario, and then you go back and forth, alternate activating. Everyone gets 2 actions. It's an action economy-based system. It's pretty... You could also... this is one thing where Mike could probably have just done, like, long, short actions. There's no core actions here that take more than 2 action points, so, like... short actions you'd want to be able to do and be able to do as many as you want. So like move, but you can't move because you only do each one once. So like you could move melee attack because they each cost 1, or move range attack, but you couldn't pray because it's a long action. It costs 2. You couldn't run because it costs 2. So the action point economy works. There's a argument to be made that unless you're going to have like 3 actions, just have them be long and short. Move, it's always a fixed 6-inch move. Climbing is a basic climb stat. Rolling a dex check. If one of the dice rolled either meets or beats 5, then they continue moving vertically. So basically you have to test a climb. You can go prone. While making a move action, model may choose to go prone. This one, the model's movement, even if they have an additional movement to spend. So basically you go prone during your move, but then it stops the rest of your move. It's a bit like going prone during your move in Infinity. You can make a run action where you go 1.5, so you go 9 inches typically instead of 6. And then melee action is strength versus defense. Ranged action is going to be dex versus defense. You get a bonus dice to your dice roll for being obscured by terrain. So nice, real simple like cover rules there. You just add a dice to the pool, and that's usually all the modifiers for it. There's not usually a plus to any. A plus would be very powerful to the dice pool. Typically, the modifiers are always just going to be like take an additional dice and add it to your test. And then the ritual action. The pray action is you gain D10 ritual points. So, like you can have a model just sit off, basically be praying and like generating ritual points. The ritual action usually costs a fixed cost based upon what it's going to be. And then you pull out RP based upon the cost of it. So like some rituals are more powerful than others, and they'll cost you more ritual points. And some of them can be free actions. Like they don't, like some of them is just like saying a word, you know what I mean? So it wouldn't eat up an action to do that. And they're almost like, it's why I think you should just have free, long, and short as your ritual, as your action classifications in this, because then you could just have the action type as opposed to having to like count APs and stuff. And then we got the cults. So this is, and I like this. It's setting, core mechanics, and the core mechanics are what, like 6 pages? How many are we at here? 14 through, not counting the cover sheet. 14 through 9, so 5 pages of rules. Love that. 6 pages of rules total. And then we're into group creation, right? So you pick your god. Remember, these are usually the children of Verrotwood, the dead children. And they're basically going to have a theme, right? So you get to name them whatever you want. This is, I really like how Mike did this. He gives you Verrotwood, he gives you Verrotwood as like your core imagination prompt, but you make up your own god. So you could, and the idea here is that you just use your imagination and the way your miniatures look, or the way you want your miniatures to look, to inform that. And you have their preferred trait be kind of their defining characteristics. So if you want to have like a sorcery god, you could have intelligence be the core trait. If you wanted to have like a violent god, it could be strength. If you wanted to have like a sneaking or shadow god, it could be dexterity. If you wanted it to be some type of like, I don't know, like stone or like Shaggoth-y sort of thing, it could be defense, like something that's like hard to kill. And then that would be what you'd use to generate your ritual points from your cultists. Then you got favor. During your doing your god's will gains you favor. Favor is used to strengthen your cult. So basically, favor is used in like as your currency. It's like your hiring currency. A new card starts with 300 favor. You'll earn more through the campaign. So think of that as like your your gold piece count in wartime. You can also do a one-off game, which is like 500 favor as like a fixed starting cost. New cultist, it's free to always indoctrinate a fresh follower to your cult. They always have 1 for all their stats. A new cultist always has 10 health. When forming your cult, you may indoctrinate up to 4 cultists. Your cult can never exceed 4 cultists at one time. If a cultist is ever permanently killed during the post-game sequence, you replace them with a brand new, fresh cultist with all starting stats of 1 and a health of 10. You just go to the village and be like, who wants to join the cult? You go find Creed from The Office. And then you increase your stats. It costs 50 favor to increase any stat by 1. No stat can ever have a stat higher than 5. And this comes out of your favor, right? So everybody starts with kind of like 4 naked cultists. And then increasing your health will also be 75 to increase them by 5. So like you go from 10 to 15 for 75 to 20 for 150 and on, but you can never go higher than 25. And then you buy equipment. And the equipment, of course, is just as themed. Mort shrooms. It's hard to pronounce. Cost 5 favor. Not much grows in the forest after the bells other than the mort shrooms. They spring to life from death, so they're like corpse flowers. Oil. Fire doesn't only help one traverse the darkness, they can also be used to set the non-believers ablaze. So you can buy yourself oil. When a model makes a burning attack, it must make a dex roll. When a model is burning, your melee attacks, if you use oil, basically it adds burning to your next melee attack if you hit somebody. So if you light your torch on fire and hit them with it. It must make a dex roll at the beginning of your activation. On a 1 to 5, you take a damage and it's still burning. On a 6 to 10, the burning goes away. So there's a 50-50 chance to just keep on burning. Poison's kind of similar. You stay poisoned until your next activation. Incense, it's going to allow you to gain 5 RP. Incense are one-use items. That means it's a free action to gain 1 RP, so you swing your incense. You burn the sweetgrass, or you huff the cocaine. And then mounts are 100 favor. You can have only 1 mount, but you can have a weird thing to ride. When you have a mount movement, you can move 9 and run 12. But you become difficult going through the forest, right? Because obviously it's harder to ride a horse through a tree than just like step around it. Mount melee. When a mounted model performs a melee action, it adds 1 to its strength, right? Because you're able to like stamp with the horse, and you can also trample. If a mounted model performs a move or run action and comes into base-to-base contact with a prone model, the prone model is immediately taken out of action. So you can just like run over stuff with your horse, which I think is really cool. Then weapons. The cultists of Verrotwood are armed with a manner of deadly weapons. These range from things like simple farming tools to artisan crafted crossbows. Again, these will all come out of your favor. So improvised weapons, or like just pitchforks and stuff like that. Light blades, heavy blades, light blunt, heavy blunt, poles. So like, spears and stuff like that, bows and crossbows. So that's why this is kind of like set in like a feudal sort of time, or medieval sort of time. You would go up to, if you wanted firearms and stuff like that, you would go up to the cowboys and you get some more weird firearms. And then rituals. Your cult's rituals represent your god's powers and influence in the mortal world. When picking 4 rituals, you should let your choice of deity affect your decision. Try to pick the 4 best representing your god, not the ones that would best lead to victory. Verrotwood was meant to be played more narratively as opposed to competitively. I love that being written in there as like a mission statement. I feel like it doesn't need to be by the kind of people that would play Verrotwood, but it is a good reminder for the Owens of this world that that's important. I do love some of these rituals that they don't cost any RP, like cannibalism. This is a passive ritual that doesn't need to be performed. If an enemy cultist is taken out of action as a result of your cult and then dies in the injury phase, you gain 50 favor because you eat his corpse. I would always take that one just because I think it's hilarious. Hardened is a passive ritual that does not need to be performed. Whenever you roll on the injury table, you must roll 2 dice and pick your preferred result. The Devout is a passive ritual that doesn't need to be performed at the beginning of every round. Gain a ritual point for every model in your cult still alive, but you may not gain a ritual point for summons, like the things that you bring onto the table. And then Survivalist, during the scouting phase, you can draw 2 cards and pick the preferred result, then reshuffle the unused deck. So these are like your kind of like they're almost like the traits of your gang, right? Your cult rather. And then we got the ones that we do. Things like Armor of the Gods. This model adds 1 of their defense stat for the next defense roll, costs 3 RP. Blessing of the Blade, add 1 of your strength for the next melee action. And these are all just like things you shout. So they're all basically free actions here. Hive Mind, this model may add 1 to its intelligence test for the next intelligence roll for 3 RP. Sight of the Divine, remember you only get 4 of these, right? So there's a million. Sight of the Divine, this model may add 1 to its dex stat for the next range attack. Grasp, you basically have like a weird like thing under the ground. Pick an enemy model not on elevated terrain, and before this model may take its next move or run action, it must make a strength test. If the result's 5 or higher, it continue the move. If it's a 4 or lower, it can't move or run. It must continue to do so every round until it can roll 5 or higher, because there's just stuff coming out of the ground. Aura of Rage, until the next round, all friendly models within 3 inches of the model suffer an extra die to their strength value when performing a melee action. So this is like a power up for the people around you as well. That's why it costs more. Berserk for 5. When a model perform this model may make a free run action. Sorry, a run action that ends with a free melee action. So basically getting 3 AP. If this melee action takes the target model out of action, this model may make another run in melee action for free. So you can just keep going, basically, like ping-ponging around. And that's kind of the general idea, is each of these is like fixed to like a what would your god want you to be doing. At 1 with the woods, to perform this ritual, the model must be in forest terrain. Move this model for free into any other forest area terrain. I love that it's a nightcrawler, like blend into the background. And you can see they're getting progressively more expensive too. Like that one's 7. For 6, you could have Revenge. This ritual is performed as a free action after taking damage from an enemy model's melee or range attack. The next successful melee or range attack by this model will deal an additional 3 damage. I would have said that targets the model that damaged him, but it's a little more flexible the way it is here. I love this miniature with the bunny head. Hoofed form for 8 RP. It's the Black Phillip. For the rest of the game, this model ignores the negative effects of difficult terrain. That's a Robert Eggers reference right there. Burnt form, a little sunshine. It's a good sci-fi one for like a sunshine style. What's his name? Mark Strong in Sunshine, where you don't really realize it's Mark Strong because he's a crispy critter. For the rest of the game, this model may not be burning. Whenever this model rolls a crit for a melee attack action, it causes burning on the target model. That's if you roll a 10 in your dice pool. And then more complicated ones like heal, like that would take, if you had 20 to start off with, that'd be half your points. Roll a d10 for the model performing the ritual and heal that model. The result, you may not heal above the model's maximum health value, but you only do yourself. Twist nature, make any piece of terrain on the board difficult until the end of the game. Beast form for 12. For the rest of the game, this model adds 1 to its strength and dex, but reduces its intelligence by 1. Swallowed by the forest, remove 1 piece of terrain from the table. This terrain feature may not be an objective. If 1 or more models are on this terrain, place them prone as close to the same position as possible. Basically, a sinkhole shows up and like just pulls stuff down. Pustulous form for the rest of the game. Anytime this model takes damage, enemy models within 1 inch take 2 damage. So this is where we're at. Like there's a gajillion of these rituals and they all do cool things, including like summoning stuff. So you can make models like summoning a lesser or greater like monster. Summoning greater costs 20. And you've got like this like strength 3, dex 2, intelligence 1, def 1 with 15 health. And of course, that's why you don't get the bonus there for devout. We get some basic terrain rules, right? So what counts as like the table surface? It's the flat. You should want at least 3/4 your table covered in terrain because this is a creepy woods. Required terrain would be required by the actual like gameplay mission or is forests because this is taking place in the Verrotwood. So you need to fill up roughly 1/4 of the table with woods. They should be spaced out evenly so that no one cult has more advantage of having the woods because a lot of the spells and abilities trigger off of them. And then you got open, blocking that gives cover. And then the other special stuff is stuff that's like forested. While model's fully within area terrain, it gains a D10 to its dice pool while defending against range attacks because you're shooting into the woods. Haunted, this terrain may have a ghost spawn in it. It's like a hangman's tree. Hallowed ground, any model within 3 of this terrain may not perform rituals like an old statue or the ruins of a church. Scalable, a model may ignore the climbing rules when moving up and down as scalable terrains like ladders, stairs, ropes, and chains. And then burning. Any model ends within an inch of a burning terrain test has to make a dex check. It rolls a dex check. If the highest result's a 6 to 10, nothing happens, but on a 1 to 5, you become burning. So something like burning out of control. Cursed, any model that makes a dice roll within 3 inches of this terrain must always take the lowest dice result. And vicious, any model that performs a melee attack action within 3 adds an extra D10 to its terrain or strength roll because it's like some crazy spiky rock or like a sacrificial place. And then difficult and poisonous, you can gain different. It slows you down or gives you conditions. Ramshackle, any model that ends its turn touching ramshackle terrain must roll at its dex stat. If the highest result of the roll is a 6 to 10, nothing happens. On a 1 to 5, the model takes 5 damage and goes prone. It's like it could be like a broken ladder or, like a car that's like, well, like it's not a car in this place, but like something like a wagon that's all rusted through. So if you stand on it, like you go through the floorboards or something like that. And that's what it's funny. It feels like there's a lot of terrain rules, but he's put these in instead of having random events. A lot of games will have like a random event table. What he's done instead is he's just said, no, give traits to all the weird terrain on the table because that's going to create your random events when you interact with it. And I like that because there's a big enough menu here that you could pick a random trait for almost any type of weird terrain piece that you have. And it would have some kind of cool narrative in-game effect, right? Now, there can be critters on the table. I love this thing. This is very the ritual, the big weird Cernunnos-headed thing. And we have some basic AI rules for how they work, right? The rule of cruel, of course, is kind of like the rule of carnage in Gaslands. Verrotwood is a cruel and unforgiving place. Whenever a rule isn't clear or players can't agree on something, pick the option that will cause the most damage or chaos. So we got rules for random forest beasts. And again, these are generic, so you can use whatever kind of horror-themed shit's in your collection. That looks cool and fits the narrative of like the horror thing that you're trying to do. So these forest beasts and greater forest beasts, like some kind of big like looming thing, flying forest beasts, little tiny annoying imps, reanimated and greater reanimated. It's like undead things, something in the woods. This is like the weird ghost in the trees. Spiders. These are giant spiders for the hobbits to get eaten by. An Ethican, some kind of weird, I don't know. It's basically a Titan, right? Like it's a giant, not quite human monster, like a troll. And then Madman. I love that basically the idea is that you could have in a violent nature happen, right? Some random weird Jason Voorhees just shows up halfway through and attacks you because that's the world that we're living in. The cults are kind of the most organized groups inside the forest, and there can just be weird dudes in pig masks that show up in the middle of the night and even attack the cults. It's very pleasing to me that the cults aren't the weirdest, scariest thing in the woods, even though they do weird, scary stuff. And then there's a random table here for like how it acts. So again, the creatures on the table, the terrain itself, you're having a narrative created without having to have almost like repetitive, bespoke encounter table random events, and some of that stuff will happen as well, but it's not bound to a single mission that you play over and over again, and eventually you know what can happen. In this, you mix and match your terrain collection and where you're at, and you're going to get totally different stories happening every time. Ghosts. I mean, you got to have ghosts. We had our first campaign. It's the Awakening campaign. The forest is in chaos as dark cults fight for the service of the gods. Every kill, every relic collected, and every horrible deed that's committed imbibes these dark deities with power, and their followers hope that one day the gods will be strong enough to break the seal and walk amongst the forest again so the children come back. And then the campaign length basically gives you an idea of how many games you should play with 2 or more players. You agree upon it beforehand, and you basically decide what the winning power level is, and it's a race to get to that, and then your god wakes up. Players should expand their god's powers by playing encounters. Before each game, determine what encounter you're going to play. And then we got our relic hunt encounter. We have a place of power encounter, so some kind of weird shrine. And you can see here, this is the random generator I was talking about here. So like what special terrain is going to be there and what creatures are going to be there. And then there's the post-encounter injury table. So those are our sort of like create your own adventures, right? Place of power encounters and relic hunt encounters. They both have enough random generation inside them. They're not going to be the same each time you play them. D10 roll for, what happens if you die during the game. So you've succumbed to your wounds and you're permanently dead on a 1, lose an eye, break your leg, have a grievous wound and have your max health reduced by 5, suffer a flesh wound, get a concussion, and then suddenly nothing happens on a 10. You get hardened by combat and gain 25 flavor. Explore the forest. So this is where we get our sort of Mordheim-esque exploration phase afterwards. And you're going to use a standard deck of playing cards to draw. The forest holds many secrets. At the conclusion of the game, each player may choose 1 cultist model to explore the forest for additional favor, gear, and much more. But exploring comes with a risk. Every cultist that you want to send out, you have to do carefully. Draw a card at random from deck of 52 and check the result. After resolving, discard the card so that it can't get drawn again during the campaign. This is a little bit like, I think Joey used this exact same system for his campaign decks in This Is Not a Test. So on a 2 to 3, take an injury. On a 4 to 5, you find something. So on D10, you might get a bunch of favor. A 6 to 7, you got a crossbow or a weapon of some kind. On an 8 to 9, you get oil, poison, mushrooms, and incense. On a 10, while searching, you found a mount. And then you get your aces, and all these are going to be different. So like the ace of diamonds, the queen of diamonds, the king of diamonds are all going to be different. The jack, king, queen for all the other houses will be different as well. But it could be things like little events. Like the king of clubs, as you make it to the top of a ridge, you see ominous storm clouds coming. The storm catches you up during the encounter. This causes every model's max range to be halved, and you may not take run actions. So all the house things are like random cool events. And so you're never going to get the same one over the course of the campaign. So 52 different things basically can happen every time you go to explore. And they get more complicated as we go on. And then you can spend favor. Your cult has been gaining favor, and you can spend it evolving your cult by buying them upgrades. You can upgrade their stats just like when you buy them, or give them new equipment. So this is the nice thing about the campaign system. It's just gold coins, but you spend the gold coins on everything because it's not an actual currency, right? It's just your god imbuing you with power. And what that means is there isn't random progression, and you pick the progression you want. So you feel like you're a little, because of the randomness of everything else, you feel like you're a little bit in control of your model collection and how they're evolving, provided they survive. And that's it. We got our little ritual sheet here, our character sheet for our 4 characters. Put down our rituals. And we're done. 63 pages overall. Which is fantastic. And like I said, there are a variety of other ways that you can play the game, including the Old West, which is super cool. I'm going to put some Old West titles in maybe we'll do this one next, because I'm going to put some Old West titles in the poll for next time to see if we want to do that stuff. So there's game 1, Verrotwoods. I love that it's a horror game. I love that it's it would actually be the great basis for like a superhero game too. Imagine like making your own Justice League, a 4-person Justice League, using that same kind of system, and replace rituals with superpowers. So you have your superpower, like your Super Friends points, and you use them for a variety of superpowers. You could very well do Verrotwood as like an evil supervillain team. It just works for a make your own like 4-person group, and then have little like fighty adventures with each other kind of thing. I love the the 2-mission structure, but each mission has enough like procedural generation that's going to be different every time you play it, and that the story evolves out of what happens while it's on the table. At $9 and 60-ish pages, with 5 to 6 pages of like core rules, this is a great weekend game, and it's the perfect amount of rules for that #28 style of gaming, where you're not super worried about the types of models you're making, because you're going to get to sort of massage the outcomes of like how they evolve and how they progress to make them fit the theme that you're trying to do. So I really like that. And Mike's super nice. So check his stuff out. If you want to just make some weird miniatures from your Mordheim collection, you could reskin it into almost any environment. Just keep the trees, keep the trees, or replace the trees with something similar of the same theme, so that you have, a common terrain piece for a lot of those rituals and abilities to mark off of. So like, if you change trees to weird stone clusters in Mordheim, it would be a super fun Mordheim analog. You know what I mean? Where you do like weird Cult of the Possessed and Skaven and whatever, just little 4-man teams fighting each other for weird stone favor. Or the favor of the Horned Rat. Do the 4 Eshin clans hunting for weird stone in the streets of Mordheim. Or in the Undercity. You know what I mean? Go to the Skaven Undercity. So see what's going on in the chat. Jim Crimmins is here. I believe we were all in the cult of Northern Ash already. Just as I voted for this one immediately. Captain Ferret says, weird math between HP and weapon damage in the Verrotwood, in my opinion. Yeah, so Verrotwood's weapon damage is success-based, right? So, like, if you're going to have 10 damage to start off with, and the standard weapon that you strike with does... Let me just pull up the weapon sheets here again. I afraid I didn't do a cheat sheet at the end. I was quickly looking for that, but here's the weapon stats. So, improvised weapons do 3 damage per hit, right? You take about a third of your health for a basic person. Crits for like a light weapon would do +1 damage. They do 5 base, 6 with an extra one, or 8, 9 with an extra one from the critical hits for the heavy bladed. You're never really going to kill anybody in one hit, which I like. The crossbow is the most dangerous ranged weapon, and again, it can crit for initial +1 damage. It's not so, yeah. It's not so crazy, I don't think, because you want your models to stay on the table a little bit longer, and it's expensive to buy these things. I think the cost should be a little bit higher maybe on some weapons, so not everybody's carrying everything. With 300, I guess you're also buying your stats out of it too, so it's not too bad. But everyone has access to the same stuff, and because it's like general equipment as opposed to being a specific equipment list, I think that you're going to be able to get more modeling out of it, and that feels like it's Mike's intention, is that the modeling is simpler and you don't worry so much about what your miniatures have on them. Right up, he says, it's a good game when you can set your enemies on fire and or poison them. That's true. Matt also says the crispy touch of the crispy man. Yeah, from Sunshine. The crispy touch of Mark Strong when he gets all crispified. Jim says, can you solo this? There are AI rules for the creatures that I guess you could apply to just making 2 cults. I mean, there's no reason not to. I don't know. Let me check drive through real fast and see if I see additional rules. Because I know there's a compendium. It might have... So there's Cultist Creation Volume 1, The Hollow Harvest, Blood and Riddles, The Mother and the Damned, The Village and the Hare. Maybe I'll just grab this right now. I'll give him $5 for it, because it's pay what you want. Or you guys will give him $5 for it, because it's pay what you want. And we'll log in here real fast, and we'll take a look. I don't remember... Look, I'm actually already own this, so I'm just going to see if I do or I don't. Add to cart for $5 because I have to do it again because I have to log in. Review order. I don't think I already own it. No, I didn't actually already own this. I'm gonna confirm order and give Mike $5. Or again, you guys will give Mike $5. And let's have a look right now and download all. I always do this. We do something in the middle of everything, and then I'm like, I don't know what we're doing. We're in the middle of it all. All right, it's zipped. It's downloading. So yeah, there's 5 expansions, 5 mini expansions in this. There it is. And let's have a look at them. Sorry, it's just unzipping everything. The Mother of the Damned. Oh no, that's not going to show. I got to open the browser so you guys can see it. Let's just go and open all of these. Open with Google Chrome. Oh, that's a pain. It opened them in a new browser, not in the existing browser. That's okay. We're going to go over here. Don't you guys love it when we do this like midstream? All right, here we go. I found them. Downloads. And then we're going to go. And there. Luckily, there's not too much stuff in my downloads. Oh, I can't open them all at once, but I can open them one at a time. Okay. Here's the a folk horror solo add-on play. Good shout out. We found it immediately. Okay, so Verrotwood, the Mother and the Damned. And this is a pay what you want expansion. So throw like a buck and you'll have all 5 of these expansions because it's a bundle. This one has solo encounters. So you're good to go. There you go, Jim. So how to use the supplement. The supplement has been designed to focus on giving you more tools out of your dark narrative, new AI creatures, new events, and solo rules. Players can take a cult through a linked series of solo encounters, and doing so would constitute a solo campaign. The Haunted Village encounter. So you set up a haunted terrain piece thing in the center. Basically, you encounter like a village that's been lost to something. The Unholy Labor encounter. You could hear its cries for what seemed like miles and tried to avoid it, but you failed. You've walked right into a flask more giving birth. You have no choice but to fight for survival and for the favor of your gods. On a 2x2. So you get different table sizes and stuff as well for the solo encounters. Oh yeah, cool. I love this. Weird flask more. Weird little critters, little newborns. And that's it. So yeah, so it's a little solo encounter with a couple of missions that are procedurally generated. And that's the first one. Let's just see if there's more solo in these later things. So Blood the Riddles. This one is also solo. All right, so there you go. So Jim, there's a bunch of solo encounters here. And you could use all these together separately to make a whole campaign of like individual encounters. Yeah, cool extra fabled equipment. The failed ritual encounter where you find something. Oh, I love this. Look at this cool Uten Vert. It's the result of a failed ritual where the blood is torn from the cultist and the blood reconstitutes into a somewhat humanoid form pupated by unseen force. It's ever silent, ever dripping mass that stands about 7 feet tall. Its only purpose appears to be to collect more blood from the living. That's so cool. It steals your blood. Then we get the Tricker's Riddle encounter. So another solo encounter, and you get a Trickster. They're ancient beings of chaos that only live to cause mischief. At first glance, they appear like harmless and small-sized, but the large grand, they're vicious creatures. Avoid them at all costs. Oh, look at him. He's so cute. I love all of Mike's weird conversions that he makes as the Trickster. So yeah, so that's why these are all, looks like 10-page little supplements. And the compendium gives you 5 of these. The only one that we didn't look at, so the Hollow Harvest, Blood and Riddles, Mother of the Damned, The Village and the Hare are all solo, it looks like. Let's have a look at, the Cultist's Creations, because that one probably is the only one that might be different. Cultist Creations, here we go. Written by the fans. Cool. This supplement's been written by the Amazed and Twisted Verrotwood fans. Everything in this supplement's optional to the main game. Verrotwood Cultist Creation Volume 1. Okay, so this is basically a fanzine section of additional stuff. So like weapon limits, sneak attack rules, a disengage action. The Village Ashes, a small leather pouch filled with the still warm ashes of a long dead village. They move about on their own accord, arriving to form stuff where there is none. That's cool. New equipment. Yeah, okay. And a cool encounter, Farmer Nelms. Oh, this is basically, it's like a Color Out of Space kind of thing, the Garden of Nelms. Very cool. So yeah, lots of additional content and a solo campaign in there, Jim, so you can definitely go check that out. Mats, would a Frostgrave Cultist box work for this maybe? Absolutely. It's if you go back to the first couple pages of the book, I think I just showed that is the Frostgrave Cultist box right there. He's used, Mats. So you got some options, and all of the weapons that are like showcased in the book are definitely going to be available on that frame. You'd have no problem making it. All right. Any other comments before we jump into game 2? Crossbows also has no minimum range, so all you need is 5 crossbows on every team. Well, you get 4 models, so you only need 4 crossbows. Jim says, I was thinking Brand's Oathband crew for use in this. That'd be cool. The mama and the daddy. Malev says. All right. Well, I think we're ready to check out this new one. I am super excited for this next game. Mostly because one, of course, I love Kev and all the stuff he's made for Forbidden Psalm. I love cosmic horror. Me and Jay both love cosmic horror. We love playing the bad guys, and there's already even expansions for this, but this is Forbidden Psalm, Endless Horrors from Beneath the Stars. Another lovely Forbidden Psalm adventure, this time in a time-agnostic setting. It's again available from Drive-Thru RPG for $16. It's 160 pages of cosmic horror. I think I showed you guys the physical copy I have as well, which looks fantastic. And boy, howdy, is it pretty in only a way that all of the stuff that Kev has made is super pretty. So let's bigify this. For some reason, this didn't load all the way. Wonderful art. Once again, and you are again playing a cult, an evil cult trying to end the world. We got a nice sort of like layout here. And again, this is done zine style. Some people have a problem with this. And this was a weird comment when I first did Forbidden Psalm. Like, I don't know. I don't want to sound derogatory, but it's kind of the norminess of it all. Kev has made a kind of an art piece of a game for people who like artistically designing miniatures on their own. If you don't like the layout style, the kind of punk zine layout style, then this game's probably not for you. So Endless Horrors Between the Stars is a 28mm miniatures game. It's miniatures agnostic, meaning you can use any miniatures on your own or custom build them. Grab some dice, some miniatures, a tape measure, a 2x2 table, and you're ready to play. Now, this game uses polyhedral dice sets, which means D&D dice. So you want to have like a D20, a D10, a D8, a D12, a D4, a couple D6, and you're good to go. Dice rolls always have a target number. Typically, the target number for anything that doesn't say it as a target number is going to be a 12. You're trying to roll a 12 or more on a D20, and almost every action is D20 based. It's usually things like damage, special effects. They'll use the other polyhedral dice. So you're mostly using your D20, but other than that, yeah, that's it. And then you got modifiers. Stats, feats, flaws, and weapons will add modifiers to the results of the dice roll, and modifiers do stack. So for instance, if you have a strength of -2 and you're making an attack with a weapon that uses strength, your D20 roll to try and hit that target number at 12 would be at -2. If you had a plus stat, like a +3 or +4, you'd add to the roll. Otherwise, you subtract. This game is set in a pre-apocalyptic world. There's a little warning here that some evil shit's going to get talked about. If you didn't know you're getting into that, I'll be surprised if you own this game. It is a game of evil cults who decide that things need to end, that the things between the stars should come forth and make the world anew. The game pulls from 3 distinct time periods, either medieval, turn of the century, so Lovecraft era, or modern, like today. I'm real tempted to set it today. Nothing surprises you anymore. We've ruined the world. The air's toxic. The seas are boiling. It's an ending anyway. You might as well speed things along. Turn of the century, war and a new plague are on the horizon. Cults and a new religion spring up every day, and the rich thrive while the rest still suffer. Poor men and women suffer injuries in factories and are discarded for their efforts. The toil of the world has taken too much from too many. Burn the sun so no one has to suffer again. So it's like an industrial revolution era. And then medieval, sick of toiling away for the profits of others, breaking your backs for the lords of the lands, sick of Christianity and suppressive nature, sick of the plague and the filth, then it's time to bring this world to an end so that the new one may be born. So this is where your cult sort of like motivation comes from and the time period, and you're going to get rules for all the time periods in here. You can set your cult's endeavors during a time period that most interests you. Before creating your cult and undertaking rituals, you should decide which era of the game you're going to play in, and different eras will have different tables for what you're going to do. And then again, content warning, just one more time for the people in the back that didn't get it. This game is about playing evil cults that want to end the world, and they'll do terrible things to achieve it. This includes themes of killing innocent people, converting people to cults, suicide, self-harm, body horror, drug use, cannibalism, and horror. They are not intended to cause distress or harm, and if anything gets too upsetting, just skip it or don't play the game. So you get some setting stuff. I love this. It's about like a knight, basically, who encounters a cult. And then later on kills himself because of the terrible things that happen. And that's the fun thing, is the bad guys in this would be the good guys in any other game. So when you talk about grimdark setting, all your NPCs and sort of like monsters, wandering monsters, would be the good guys. They'd be the heroes. It's a little boss monster in that game, and I think that's delightful. Converting a Forbidden Psalm model, so basically just how your terms go. Kev's really good about putting this in here so that if you want to do any type of like warbands carrying over, traveling between eras, you can. It's just a nice little add-on. And then more of his awesome art. The art in this kind of reminds me of Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, which was a book that traumatized many of us in the 90s because it was sold at Scholastic book fairs and probably shouldn't have been. So if you played a Forbidden Psalm game before, pretty standard. You get 5 models. You create your Endless Horse like your god. Select your 5 models to use for your cults. Assign each model a name and pick a cult leader. Pick a leader ability for that cult leader. Allocate stats for each cultist. Roll for a flaw, roll for a feat. So the usual Forbidden Psalm thing is you're good at something, you're bad at something. You got to pick your stats. There's basically 2 blended ways that you can have stats. You can be really good at one thing, kind of good at something else, then suck at the other 2. Or average at 2 things, neutral at one thing, and then bad at one other thing. So it's like a sliding scale, but then you assign them the stats that you want them to be on. And then you spend your 50 starting resources on all your equipment. But everybody starts with a cult dagger because you get given your friendship knife when you join the cult. I want to do a Mandy miniature game. That's what I really want to do. Yeah, we're gonna do a Mandy miniature game and then have my Nicolas Cage random NPC wandering around. Creating your god. So this is the one departure from the normal Forbidden Psalm thing. You got to pick what your deity is going to be. So your Endless Horse can be written as the description, purpose, and desire. So for example, if you rolled a 1 on each D100 roll, you get the abject infinite that wants your eyes. Because of course, like all great games, we've got tables on tables on tables. So describe your thing. So you could be like the ghoulish on the first table. Fate, your cultists, the ghoulish angel. The ghoulish grief. So this is what it wants, right? So the first table is the description. So now you get your purpose. So it's your description, purpose, and desire. So if you rolled 1 on each D100 roll, you would get the abject infinite that wants your eyes. So in this one, it would be, like I said, the ghoulish angel. And then what's the final table? This is the next D100 table. And each of these has like a rule that wants the dreams of the living, of all living beings. The ghoulish angel that wants the dreams of all living beings. Be the name of my endless horror. But then the rules would be +2 to rituals if the player recalls their last dream detail. And then angel, one cultist is named to the touch and can see the future. Whenever that model makes a test, make a prediction about the dice roll. If the prediction was right, it counts as a critical success, and 1, it cannot be predicted. So like, you've got basically like a profit, and then also I can get like a cool plus bonus if I can recall my dreams. And this is kind of my favorite thing because you have this like it's traits. Wants red balloons. There's some gimmicks in here too. Wants to spread vermin. Wants red balloons. Wants only the best. Wants to see you. +3 ritual if you or your opponent are wearing glasses. And some people might not love this because it's a little early Age of Sigmar, right? Where there's like kind of goofy rules in here. But if you're playing a Forbidden Psalm game and you don't like goofy rules, then yeah. 52, it refuses to comply with your grammar, with your grammar. +1 to ritual for every spelling error you spot in this book. And in the name itself, it's got a spelling error, which I think is hilarious. Wants to show you such sights. It's the whatchamacallit, the event horizon rule. +1 to your ritual for each of your cultists with a presence above +3. Wants to spread pollution. +1 ritual for every poison model on the table. Yeah, so like lots of cool, like sort of wants to party like it's 1999. +3 for the ritual if your jeans are flared. Oh God, Kev, well done. Just no notes. So good. But again, it's the thing that's going to set your cult apart is what's the endless horror that you're fighting for. And again, more lovely art. Get our cultist names. See, I'm in here. There's Ash right there. And we keep scrolling down. And then you get your cult leader. So your cult leader is going to have a special rule. You can be like a magical adept, a warrior, a hedge witch, a high priest. This lets you theme your cult a little bit around like what you rolled again for your endless horror even and like what kind of stats it would like. And then we're into the standard agility, presence, strength, and toughness and making your guys. All right, so flaws and feats. Flaws, things like doubt. This cultist can't perform rituals, and the cult suffers -1 to ritual rolls. The end is nigh. If this cultist fumbles, they miss their next activation as they spend a round preaching to the masses. Kool-Aid. When another cultist makes a death save, this cultist also has to make one regardless of the damage they took during a scenario. Non-Euclidean dice. Cultists roll twice. So 2 dice when attacking and taking the lower roll. If both dice are the same, the cultist mind is warped and they gain the warped mind mutation. Your god is not listening. Roll 2 flaws and take both results. And then feats, Worm King. Cultist says the body made out of worms. Reduce all damage by 1. Like worms split when your body comes apart. Holy Communion. As an action, they can ask their god for a boon. They auto-pass the next test they take. Horrifying. Horrors treat this cultist as friendly, which means that things don't come after you. And then you can also have mutations. So we won't need eyes to see. Models ignore all penalties for range attacks, including darkness and gloom. Duck feet, -1 agility, but models ignore all terrain for movement. Nose is replaced by a hole in the face. All investigators must pass a presence test to attack this model. And then we get to our equipment and weapons. And this is where the time period starts to come in. And of course your stats will determine how much, just as a standard Psalm game. Number of weapon slots you have is 5 plus your strength mod. So like if you're -2 strength, you can hold 3 pieces of equipment. If you're +1, you can hold 6. Your free cult dagger does take up a slot. Types of armor, and again, based on any era, you could have basic armor. Medieval, you can have full plate. Turn of the century, waxed coats. And modern, a bulletproof vest. Weapons from any era, things like a sling, a crossbow, brass knucks. Medieval, you can have 200 weapons like a great knight sword. Turn of the century, you can have flintlock pistols or revolvers, shotguns, butcher's cleavers. And then modern, things like tasers, rifles, sniper rifles, fireman's axe. And then cool bonus ammos and stuff too. So just based on when you're gonna be putting everything. Some fun equipment, things like a cult icon or a wooden duck, but it's Peng. You can always find Peng. A backpack for additional equipment slots. Whiskey. Medieval antidote and tinctures. So leeches and cocaine. Antidote being the leeches, tincture being the cocaine. Turn of the century, remedies and oil lamps. Remedy also being cocaine. And then modern, LED torch, antibiotic, and antidote. Antidote also being cocaine. It's just cocaine all the way down. It's always cocaine. It's always leeches. The leeches may go, but the cocaine stays. States and properties. These are just the special rules for your equipment and stuff like that. Can things jam? Do they fire automatically? And then manuscripts. These are, again, timeless because they're magic spells. Somnium, observations of death. Rignod, any model within 12 takes D8 damage and ignores armor, sending like little worms after them. And of course, calamities, because just like in Forbidden Psalm, things go wrong when you cast spells. Again, I love the art in this. Kid did a great job with just the type of art. It's super creepy. Play rules are the exact same as Forbidden Psalm. So pick a scenario, determine the scenario, determine the weather, determine your deployment and see who goes first. All the scenarios are going to have initiative, take turn to activate a single model, activate any investigators or knights in play, activate any hostiles that are in play, and then end the game round. So the investigators and knights are the people that are after you, right? And then hostiles can be any of the other things that are on the table. Make a range attack, use a melee attack, use a piece of equipment or feat, pick a manuscript, pick one or more updated items within an inch, strike a model, perform a ritual, convert a civilian to your cause. What is this thing? I don't know. It's the ritual. And then the core rules are the same, rolling your weapon damage after you roll a DR12 roll. Rituals can be things you're trying to do. Performing a ritual helps you awaken your endless horror and bring forth the end of all things. Any cultist can perform the ritual action. Each cultist can only attempt a ritual once per scenario, regardless if they succeed or fail. To perform a ritual, you make a DR20 zealotry test. The model then adds the following to the roll. The cult zealotry, any ritual benefits granted by the cult's endless horror. Any benefits from equipment like a cult icon, +1 to the ritual per killed model of the scenario, like your sacrifices basically. +1 for failed ritual rolls this scenario, and +1 if an avatar is on the table. Rituals cannot benefit from this blessing. You must roll for the ritual end unless a specific ability allows it. You cannot re-roll this roll. Blessings are your 5 things you can do to add to things. On a crit, the cultist is blessed and immediately gains a new feat. On a failure, compare the result to this table and ignore all modifiers. On a 1, the cultist sees the true horror of what they're doing and flees the table, dropping all their equipment on the spot, never to be seen again. They just disappear and die. On a 16 to 19, they gain a mutation. Zealotry is the stat of the whole cult shares. At the start, it starts at 0. Though playing the campaign, performing rituals, and other in-game effects can increase it. When you make a zealotry test, regardless of the cultist taking the test, you always use the whole cult's zealotry. And for every 2 civilians converted during the scenario, the zealotry increases by 1. Infamy is what you're trying to gain by undertaking the end of the world. You get your infamy to go up by completing a scenario where you have a cult to survive, kill or convert a civilian, kill any investigators or night hostiles, meet a certain scenario objectives, and your infamy level will allow you to gain things. So like if a cult's infamy level is higher than 10, the cult gains the following. At the end of the scenario, you get 100 resource points from hidden secret donors, and then you get +1 to your zealotry tests. And civilians are resources for most cults. They can be sacrificed in rituals, converted, or used for other appalling purposes. They act like hostiles in most ways and are activated at the start of the hostile step. So they're basically like basic dudes. They don't become hostile until you do things to them, though, and they're always going to be on the table. You can sometimes have an avatar, and the avatar is going to be like the monstery thing. They have 0 for all their stats at start with, but they gain benefits based on your horror's description. Avatars start with 15 plus HP plus their toughness. They cannot use equipment and have 0 armor. Their purpose gives it an attack. Their desire gives it a special ability. And the avatars auto-pass morale tests. So basically, whatever their name is going to be their stats. So our Ghoulish is +2 toughness. Angel will be our attacks. Burning Aura, 3 damage, not roll. All models in 3 take this damage. Damage ignores armor. It's just a ball of fire. A burning angel. And then its special rule, and what did we have? We had, it was at the end, that wants to, only the best, I can't remember what did I say we had? It was a burning angel that, let's just say, wants to haunt the dreams of the living. Models hit by attacks from this avatar must take a toughness test or fall asleep. So it's auto hitting you with burning 3, and then you just pass out as the fire starts to like go after you. It's you know what it is? It's the dead lights from Pennywise. It's just the dead lights knocking you out. And you can bring it to the table and have it kill things. I love this. More notes and story stuff. At the start of each scenario, each player gains the following 6 blessings. These are like your once per game things you can do. So deal max damage, reroll any dice for someone else's, remove a down model from play, but you ought to pass your death save, cancel a crit or a fumble, reroll in the offerings table, or automatically pass a test. And offerings are things like, some would say that it's theft, others plundering the dead, but you know, what you find is an offering from endless horror. So offerings are your like loot rolls on the table. So you can get like a random weapon, a random armor, a skull, a bandage. And then I don't want to ruin the scenarios too much, but they're all 2x2 scenarios. And they all have a weather effect like heavy rain, or it can be windy or gloomy. The moon can be out. And then this is the hostiles rules. Got some redacted stuff here. This is basically the tree of like how things act for your AI. Random hostiles that can show up, cosmic horrors, zombies, dogs, the cult of the crawling eye, investigator knights, and oceanic horror, cosmic rats, and roll twice and apply them. Here's all of our stats for our weird investigators for the different eras. So for medieval, it would be like a Knight of the Order or Lord of the Order for the investigators, a squire or a bachelor knight for your basics. Turn of the century, it could be like a police force or a soldier for the high level ones, or a citizen investigator, like a Scooby-Doo gang, and private investigators for the lower ones. And the cult of the crawling eye, you're not the only one that wants to end the world. The cults of the crawling eye date back to as far as records go. And this is like our constant bad guy cult that we're going to be fighting against. And so they get their own special rules too. For their cosmic horrors, cosmic zombies, oceanic horrors. Yeah, hell yeah. Look at that thing. Oh, it's so underwater. Natural horrors, like your weird Cernunnos sort of thing. Your weird folk horror monster. And then we get our scenarios. And I'm going to tell you can play them in order and play them solo as well. And when playing as investigators or knights solo, never spawn NPC investigators or knights. Instead, check the rules for playing these scenarios. They'll be referred to collectively as investigators in the scenarios. So you don't have to use the random table for stuff to show up if you're not playing head-to-head against another cult. You're just going to use the scenario one. So for solo play, Call of the Void, this is a repeatable scenario. Basically, so it has come to the beginning of the end. You each awoke to call your endless horror. Together you join in your worship, and now you must spread the message as far as you can. Draw this into the fold. The scenario can be replayed after scenario 10 until a cult has at least 10 zealotry, and then you can approach the final ritual. So you're just trying to convert civilians. For co-op, Players select a board edge to investigate on initiative and place models within 3 of the board edge. Solo play, players may place models in either deployment edge. Roll for the weather. At the end of round 1, each participating cult spawn 2 civilian investigators or squires, depending on the era. These are spawned on a random hostile deployment area. If playing the scenario a second time, instead spawn investigators based on your infamy level, and then repeat rounds 3 and 5. So basically, cops are showing up, right? It'd be so fun to have Mulder and Scully show up, or Skelder and Mully, sorry. And playing as investigators, instead of converting civilians, the investigator team may warn them by passing a presence test when within an inch. On a success, remove the civilian from the table. For every 5 civilians removed, investigators gain their rationality by 1. Playing as investigators solo, at the start of each round, 3 cultists to the crawling eye spawn. Instead of following normal hostile rules, these cultists want to convert civilians. They move towards the civilian, and if they get within 1 inch, they make a zealot just and convert them. So you can have the cops be good guys too, and be trying to do things. And the rest of these are played in order, so I'm not going to go through them all because I don't want to spoil them really. I think people would want to see them on their own. But you're trying to get to the end. So 9 is End of the Gates of Hell. And then the final ritual is the last scenario, Dead Moon. Very dead space, actually. And you're going to try and summon your... Sorry, let Doom overtake us 11, the last scenario. This is where you're trying to get the gods to come. And you get your post-game rules. These are pretty much the same as in Forbidden Psalm. Cool artifacts to find based upon the era. Your injury rolls. The final ritual. And you get, and then basically a whole bunch of things that could happen based upon who your bad guy was. Feats for the good guys. So you can play as investigators. There are those who don't want this terrifying world to end, foolish as it may seem. If you wish to play as those fighting against the endless horrors, there's rules for playing investigators and knights. So if you want to play as the good guys, there's a whole appendix at the end for adding that in, and how you make an investigator or knight instead, including feats and flaws for them to play, a set of names for them, based on era, and then you get your roster sheets, your quick ref. Lots of good quick ref in here, which I love because I did flip back and forth a lot in my older books. So having a quick ref at the end, I think is a great idea from Kev. And then more book names and our usual end stuff. So that's the Endless Horseman Between the Stars. And I'm super excited about this one. What I love the most about it is it's a whole game in parallel, kind of like Verrotwood, about playing as cults. But then you get a whole parallel game where you can flip the game over and play as the investigators as well. And you can play it in 3 different eras. That 160-page runtime is doing a lot of heavy lifting for like basically being 3 types of game that you can then play the opposite side of as well. It's almost like playing through, I don't know if you remember Resident Evil games, but like very often, Resident Evil 2 is a good example of this, where you play through it as Claire and then you play through it all again as Leon. And it's the same game, but you're doing things slightly oppositely. So it's kind of taking inspiration of that, where one's the Claire playthrough and then one's the Leon playthrough. I don't know who the cults are, but it's a little bit like that, where you can play as, we like playing Dead Space and then getting to play the Unitologists first, and then afterwards playing through as Isaac Clarke. Speaking of which, and as a little bonus here, we're going to take a look at one of the first expansions for this game, and the one that I think I'm most excited about, Tengoku Station. And we did expansions for Verrotwood, so we're doing expansions for this one too. This is the sci-fi expansion. So like I just said, this is the expansion if you wanted to play this as Dead Space. Once an unregulated space mine, now the final resting place of humanity, roughly spheroid lump of rock dubbed, whatever that is, XS Omega. It strayed too close to our sun and became trapped in the gravity's pull. Intrigued by this extrasolar object, which was around a third the mass of Luna, the megacorps of Earth wasted no time in drilling into it and found a weird alien species. Endless gods, there you go. So we've got our little diagram of it, and you're basically trying to survive in between the plates. There's different chambers, like an agri chamber and hydroponics, outer wards, tenements, factories. Think of like Hadley's Hope if Hadley's Hope was like stratified from Aliens, or the giant station in Dead Space 2. And so you get a whole new variation for playing this warband creation wise in a like a sci-fi space station. Even all the oxygen's gone, so there's like an oxygenated gel that you're breathing. Your leader is a heathenist, a noble sign indulging their bloody vices among the poor population. You have better gear, but are fewer in number than the scum that you prey on. Your violence is not purely for sport. You're chosen of the endless horror and want to bring about glorious doom. Your cult's maximum size is 4. You may not hire more breathers after cult creation. If a model leaves your cult, it may be replaced with a drone wearing a PFC tank. You only start with 75 resources. You can buy anything as normal prices. During cult creation, the inner wards are free. Each breather starts with a free O2 tank and superior feed. Each breather improves any of their stats by 1 at creation. So you have these like weird alternate ways of playing each of the cults. And then you get a symbol of your horror: brains, cells and microbes, chains. Cool armor, like you get gutter rags, homemade armor, light armor, bone plate, obsidian shard armor. And then all your cool, weird additional ammunition and armor and weapons from the different wards. Once you get into the middle ward, you get things like shotguns, and once you get to the final one, you're going to get like weird chems and spacesuits and reclaimer plates, which I think is supposed to be a basically like power armor. And then there's all the environmental rules, right? Because you're playing in like a space station. So playing in tunnels, 2D versus 3D environments, walls, like your Space Hulk stuff. Playing with crowds, civilian models of crowds, because there's people that are like wandering around in big, large groups. It's not abandoned. There's millions of people still living there. I get your different monsters like toxic horrors, sweeper golems, and then a campaign system playing through all the missions. And then you get random artifacts like a grenade launcher, the last coffee tin, the femur of St. Hasser, the obsidian heart, the crown of the Yellow King, and holy fusion bombs. So some of these are the same in the core Endless Horror as they are here, but there's a bunch of like sci-fi themed ones that allow you to have it be set specifically in this sci-fi setting. So what a cool add-on. And Tengoku Station is $10 as a little add-on if you want to do the sci-fi version too. So basically adding a 4th time period, and it's typically grim, dark, forbidden Psalms style. So let's check in with the chat, and then I think we are just about done. Matt Olson says, this is the other side of the Silverman. I could probably use a lot of models from that, for sure. Brian Duffy says, speed things along, all too real. Endless Horror is also high in my 2025 list. The book's gorgeous, which pulls me right in. And then Dan Fox says, hey, only have a few minutes to spare, so I thought I'd drop by and say hi. Well, I guess that's it then. We are done. So coming up next week, if you are a patron, we will be putting the poll up this afternoon for our next game. I'm going to throw in some different, I'm going to curate a little bit and throw in some stuff from my list that you guys haven't suggested so far, and then throw in the suggestions. I'm going to start with the suggestions from last week for the poll. I'm going to add in a few of my own, and then I'm going to curate what was remaining on the last poll for you guys to vote on. If you guys are watching this in the future, as basically the way that this works is the patrons vote. We do a live show and a live stream where we go through these all together. I answer any questions from the chat. You'll be watching last week's when we're recording the next one. So if you were watching this live on YouTube, you were watching the previous week's live show, you can join us usually at noon that Wednesday to check out the next one. So hope you guys had a great time. Bye to everybody that watched today. Treads Workshop, Love the Shinobi, Ryan Dunphy, Gazman, Gary Lee, Matt Olson, Jim Crimmins, Captain Ferrite. Who else is here today? I think I got everybody. Dan Falk just dropped in. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your week. We will see you next Wednesday for more Indie Hour. Until then, I'm Ash.